Okay. So, first of all, good evening, curious minds. A warm welcome to all the first timers and a big shout out to the patrons of Curious Minds community. Just a reminder, this meetup Zoom session is being recorded, and tomorrow I will upload it on my YouTube channel, the link of which will be shared in the meetup chat. So, today we are discussing, can stress affect your memory? Stress is a natural human response that prompts us to address challenges and threats in our lives. Everyone experiences stress to some degree. When stress becomes overwhelming and prolonged, it can negatively impact a person's daily life. And that is when we call it chronic stress or prolonged stress. Stress and mood disturbances can act as a distraction and make it difficult to focus, which can lead to memory problems. And it can lead to serious brain changes, which we will talk about. So, we have covered the signs of stress in detail in earlier talk, which is available on YouTube if you want to go there, if you want to understand the signs of stress and the physiology of stress response. We have talked about that in detail in earlier talk. But in this talk, I will be exploring more on how stress affects our memory. We will first learn about how memory is formed, consolidated, and retrieved in our brain, which regions are responsible, and what goes as a macroscopic level in terms of neuronal network level when memory is formed. We will go into that depth to understand how memory is formed and how stress changes that memory formation. And at the end, we will discuss the strategies to manage stress and boost memory. So let's get started and remember, curiosity is the key to unlocking the wonders of science. So don't hesitate to ask questions or share your thoughts after the talk. So before moving into today's talk, let me introduce myself. I am a cancer immunologist, educator, and science communicator. I am a healthy aging advocate and advocate for women's health and empowerment. So I founded this curious and creative lab where you can check our website where you can find our mission and the services we offer. So and we also have a book meetup where we meet every month. And this month we are talking about this book, The Song of the Cell, an exploration of medicine and the new human by Dr. Siddharth Mukherjee. It's a very important read in the book because we know that medicine is revolutionizing. So we have cell therapies, we have genetically modified therapies. So this book will give you an idea of how, where, and how we are going to medicine. Medicine is changing. mRNA vaccines, COVID mRNA vaccine is the first example of that we have recently seen, and there will be many more. So, this book is telling about all that, and it is telling in a very interesting way of all the stories of how the development or discovery happens. So, effective from July 15, we are introducing a nominal membership fee, which is $10 for 4 month period. And if you don't want to go for this membership fee, you can attend individual talk for just $2 price. It's like just to afford that community going and give you great services. So now let's go on to today's topic of how stress affects memory. So when I say like, can stress affect memory? I have two answers for that. Stress can disrupt memory and stress can enhance memory. Now you will ask me like how stress is doing both. So I will tell you, when we are in the moderate stress condition or for short term moderate stress, then stress is actually boosting our memory. First point. The second is when the stress is long term, then it does the opposite. Then it actually decreases the memory. So this is interesting. At one point, stress is increasing memory. Another, stress is actually doing the reverse. It's decreasing our memory. So we will explore both of these paradigm and we will understand how and what happens under both these conditions. But before going into that, let's just first understand how memory works. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the information processing model of memory. So here, don't get scared, I will break down. It's a very interesting model. So we take all the information from our sensory input. Our eyes, our nose, our ear is always taking information from the environment. And these information are going on in the sensory memory portion. So if we are paying attention, then only this memory is being transferred to what is called the short term memory. And if you are not paying attention, the memory will get lost. Okay, so this is important to understand. So when I say short term memory, you can understand by an example, like if someone gives you a phone number, tells you a phone number, and you don't have a paper and pen to write, you will remember that phone number for few seconds only. And that is where you are keeping this phone number in your short term memory. And if you write it down, you will completely forget it. You will not remember it because it doesn't matter, because you have already stored somewhere in the hard copy. So then uh, there is working memory. So working memory is the short term memory. And if you want to, that short term memory is important for you and you process that memory, you work on that memory, that maintenance rehearsal thing. When you are learning something, you have to repeat the process again and again. And what you are doing is actually you are transferring that short term memory to the long term memory. And how you are doing this, we will come into this very interestingly, how brain works, how neuronal networks are formed. When you are repeating the process again and again, you are making new neuronal connections, and so your short term memory is being consolidated and it is transferred into the long term memory. So in the long term memory also, some information may be lost over time, but some information is preserved. Like we know what's the smell of the food which we loved when we were in our childhood. We still remember that smell. We still remember some of the fond memories of our childhood. And that is the part where these memories are stored in your long term memories. So, now how and which memories are important for you is your brain recognizes it by the way, like how many times you are retrieving that memory, how many times your that memory is important to you. So as you are retrieving, your long term memory is getting strengthened. So this is the way you have always remembered, like when you are learning something new, your teacher will tell you to repeat that thing again and again. So this is how your memory is consolidated. So now let's go into, like, this is what we are talking about. This long term memory is important for us. And this is where your stress can cause damage. So we will go into a little bit more detail about the long term memory. So long term memory can be divided into two different types. So one is explicit and the another is implicit. Explicit means declarative memory, and implicit means procedural memory. So what it means is, explicit concerns facts and events along with your conscious awareness of knowing them. And implicit memories are about skills and habits, about knowing how to do things without having to think consciously about them. So for example, when you are learning to ride a bicycle, that is a time when you are using your explicit memory. You are learning that task. But after a while, that goes into your implicit memory, and you don't have to recall it. Like, you don't have to consciously think how to ride a bicycle. You are doing it. You have that unconscious memory of it. That is the difference between the implicit and the explicit memory. So this is important because the stress changes these two memories in different ways. So now is the retrieval. So when we want to access a memory, the retrieval process occurs. It involves activating the neural networks associated with the stored memory and bringing the information back into working memory for conscious awareness and use. The process of retrieval is influenced by various factors such as cues, context, and emotional state. We talked about this in previous slide, but this is important to understand. So now we know that we have short-term memory, we have long-term memory, and long-term memory can be divided into explicit and implicit. Explicit means you have the conscious awareness of thing. Implicit, you don't have conscious awareness, your brain learns it, your hands learns it. Like when someone is playing a guitar, a trained guitarist will know how to play it, and it's just the implicit, it's working on the implicit memory. So now in our brain we have different regions to store different types of memory. So here this figure will tell you which regions are involved, but we will not complicate things here. We will just focus on three different regions. So first is your cortex. Cortex is the region which is this covering the whole brain, this ridges kind of region which is involved in your cognitive functioning, your decision making process. And this is the region which is mostly involved for your short term memory. And then we will talk about amygdala. Amygdala is the fear center of your brain. Whenever you you are witnessing something very new, your amygdala gets activated. So it is involved in emotional memory. We will talk about this. And then we have another region which is located somewhere here in between amygdala and your cortex, which is hippocampus. This is a very interesting area of the brain, and it is involved in your long term explicit memories. So, hippocampus plays a major role there. So, these are the three regions which are very important, and we will focus on these three regions in this how stress affects the memory. So, now let's just go into a little bit more macroscopically inside the functioning of the brain. So, to understand the previous to understand the how the hippocampus and the cortex is working for your memory, we will just understand with a totally simplistic computer metaphor. Think of the cortex as your hard drive where memories are stored, and your hippocampus as the keyboard, the means by which you place and access memories in the cortex. So you will understand this is how hippocampus and your cortex is playing role. So we know where in our brain different types of memories are stored. Now to understand how stress influences memory formation and retrieval, we need to look at deep we need to look deeper and understand how your brain handles memory. So be ready with your magnifying glass as we are now looking at the level of neuron, which is the functional unit of the brain. So this is your brain, and this is the neuronal network, and this is the single neuron. So neuron is the functional unit of the brain, and if we look deeper, this is how a neuron looks. So it has a head, and then a body, and then the terminal fibers. So this neuron, so okay, so what's going on the level of the clusters of neurons within the cortex and the hippocampus? So memory and information is stored in neuronal networks. It involves strengthening of some branches rather than others of a network. Okay. So as I mentioned you before, when we are learning a new task, we are repeating a task. Okay. So when we are repeating a task, these neurons talk to each other more and forms a strengthening cluster. And when the cluster is stronger, you have a stronger memory. And when this cluster is weaker, you will have a weaker memory. Just a simple relation. So, when a neuron has heard some fabulous gossip and wants to pass it on, then a wave of electrical excitation sweeps over it. This triggers the release of chemical messengers, which are called neurotransmitters. They will float across the synapse and excite the next neuron. So, this is a neuron. When it wants to transmit a message to another neuron, it will do so through the neurotransmitters. So this image will explain you much better. So this is first neuron, this is second neuron. The first neuron wants to transmit a message. It is the message which you have received from your sensory organs, and then the message is being transferred in the form of neurotransmitters. So these neurotransmitters will be released from the first neurons, and the second neuron will receive these neurotransmitters, and in this way, a signal is transferred. And what it means by signal is transferred, suppose you have seen a red color ball, and this red color ball is important to you and you want to remember it. So this red color ball message is received by your eyes, and it is transferred to your cortex, short term memory, and you want to retrieve it to your long term, you want to consolidate it to your long term memory, then you will repeat this task. And then this particular neuron which is forming this kind of memory will share this information to other neurons to form a strong neuronal network, so that you can remember this memory much more longer. And this is how your neurons talk to each other and form a memory. And so this neurotransmitter which I'm talking about is very important. And we have hundreds of neurotransmitters in our brain which are doing this function. And one of the neurotransmitter which I will be focusing on is glutamate. This is a very important neurotransmitter, and it is excitatory in nature. What it means by excitatory is that we have two different kind of neurotransmitters in brain. One is excitatory, one is inhibitory. So excitatory neuron will transmit its information, and that information will be positively enhanced. The inhibitory information will be transmitted to another, and it will be stopped immediately by the second neuron. So in this way, the brain function controls the positive and the negative information. So glutaminergic synapses is very critical for your memory formation. So glutaminergic synapses simply means when the synapse is occurring. Synapse is when two neurons come close to each other and they talk to each other, and they talk via the release of these neurotransmitters. So when this thing is happening, this is when you are forming memory. To understand how glutamate work, we have to understand few of the properties of this neuronal transmission, this neurotransmitter transmission. First of all, synapses are not non-linear in function. And second, there is something called long-term potentiation. So we will understand what I mean by this non-linear in function. So it is like that. If there has to reach a certain level of glutamate in the second neuron to register the message. Let's understand by it an example. So certain X amount of glutamate is released by neuron 1, this neuron, which is the sender, to the receiver. The receiver will not hear the message till the glutamate levels have reached to a certain point. So if you are in a class, you are learning a new lesson, the teacher is repeating that information again and again, but your brain is not registering it. For 9 times, you didn't register, you didn't make any memory. And the 10th time, you made a memory. That is what is non-linear in function means. So you have to have a level of glutamate to make a memory. So first is that's this property of glutamate transmission. Then is the long-term potentiation. LTP, which is a cellular process that is widely considered to be the cellular basis of learning and memory. So it involves the strengthening of synaptic connections between neurons. So glutamate is heavily involved in this induction and maintenance of LTP. When glutamate is released from this presynaptic neuron, the first neuron, the sender, it binds to specific receptors. So this receiver will have receptors. So understand it like a key and lock. So it is a lock and these are the key, and this will bind to the receptor. And when it binds to the receptor, the signal is received and it will be transmitted inside. So when glutamate is released from the presynaptic, it will bind to a specific receptor, and the postsynaptic receptor will lead to an influx of calcium ion. I'm going into a little description of this, the mechanism, but it's interesting to understand and like how this thing happens. Like we think of memory formation as a very simple thing, but it's a very, very complex mechanism which is happening. So whenever you are learning something new, this is what is happening in your brain, and understanding this is just fascinating. And this is also very simplistic mechanism I'm telling you. There are many neurotransmitters doing its task when we are forming memory. So this is received by this second receiver, and then calcium influx happens. So calcium will go inside this neurotransmitter, and then the electrical stimulation happens and the message is received. So this is the whole mechanism, simplistic mechanism, what is happening during glutamate transmission and memory formation. So other neurotransmitters which are involved are acetylcholine, dopamine, norepinephrine, which also plays a important role in memory formation. So this is the two properties which are crucial. And then now let's come into the first thing that your short-term, mild or moderate short-term stressors will enhance your memory. So till now, till here, we understood like how memory is formed, what are the different forms of memory, and which region of brain are involved. So this was all the science behind memory formation. So now let's go into the second part where how stress is doing its function. So there are two different scenarios. One is when there is short-term stressor. So what is short-term stressor? Like before going into here, let's just go into this slide where there is a little bit mechanism of how what happens when we face this short-term stressors. So stress response is a very adaptive response, and it is there in your system to help you survive. And it's a very important survival adaptation mechanism. So whenever we see, for example, when you see a lion or a snake or something you're very feared of, and that stressor is for short term, what will happen inside your brain? Your brain, your amygdala, your fear response center will get activated, your hippocampus will get activated, and then it will send direct signals. So your brain is connected to the spinal cord, which is running through your spine, right? Your backbone. So there is a spinal cord, and the spinal cord is connected to every important organ of your body by these spinal fibers. Okay, so you receive the stress response message in your brain, and it is transmitted down in your spinal cord, and this is going into all the organs. And so this slide will tell you the sympathetic nervous system is activated. What it does, it dilates your pupil, it will inhibit your saliva, it will increase your heart rate, it will dilate your lungs, and it will inhibit in digestion. And so the list goes on. The conclusion is it prepares your body for either flight, fight, or freeze response. So it is telling you to just run away from that situation or either freeze. So everything your body is considering important at that point of time will be activated, and whatever the body is not considering important, like your reproduction, like your digestion, it will not activate that, it will stop that. So now interesting thing, like, understand this. This is important for you to activate all your senses and register that situation into your memory, so that next time when you are encountering the same stress response, you will know what to do. So that is the time when you are encountering a short term stressor which is activating your alarm system in your body needs your memory in place. Your memory is boosted. And this happens because this hormone, which is cortisol, which is also generally known as the stress hormone, is activated from your kidneys. Kidneys have these adrenal glands just top on it. Top of the kidney is the adrenal glands, and these stress response um, hormones are, when they are activated, they will signal the um, signal the liver to release all the stored glucose. So all the stored glucose in the liver will be released in the bloodstream. And we all know that our brain utilizes sugar as the main food for its health. So if there is excess sugar, there will be more neuronal uh, connections happening, because neurons are now like in the bathing in the glucose. They will take all the glucose, form new neuronal connections, and your memory will be boosted. For example, you will all remember some um, any event in your life which was very uh, either alarming, or you were in love, your first kiss, 9/11 incident, if you were there, or incidences like this, your brain registers it so sharply that you remember that incidences even after years and years they have passed. So this is what it happens, and this is referred to as the flesh bulb memory. So, this memory is like it refers to your vivid and detailed recollections of highly significant and emotionally charged events. So, these memories are often characterized by sense of photographic clarity and a strong emotional impact. So, you will remember small details, like you will think like you remember the face of that person, or the what the person was wearing, or what was happening at that moment, the time, and the whole picture will come into your uh, it will be very clear to you. So that's the photographic clarity. And despite their vividness, flashbulb memories can be prone to inaccuracies and distortions over time. So this is also important to understand. So this is how your stress is improving your memory, and this is doing for your own benefit, for enhancing that coding. So, and it is consolidating all that memories to protect you if you encounter the similar incident next time. So that is evolutionary helping you. So now what happens? Uh, okay, so this is what I was talking about. It is necessary for your survival, and it increases your enhances your memory consolidations. It is for your survival signaling. So the release of glucocorticoids or increases the glucose in your bloodstream, which will enhance your memory. And this will, even though it is a very energy it is not an energy efficient process. A lot of energy is wasted during stress response, but your body wants you to remember, and memory is prioritized. So not only the vivid memory, you will your all the senses memory will be enhanced. So you will be very efficient in remembering the smell, remembering the sound. So all the senses will be activated and the memory will be prioritized. So emotional memory. So we talked about, so all this the logical memory thing is going into your implicit memory, your explicit memory, and this is controlled by your hippocampus. The another part of the another region of the brain, amygdala, which is involved in your emotional memory, also plays an important role during stressful situation. And this is a very important thing to understand. So during cases of PTSD, uh, your amygdala is activated, it gets enlarged, your anxiety arousal is every time activated, and during that time when you are in a threat state every time, and that's why the memories of that incident is so much, it feels like so much real, even though it is not occurring, you feel like they are occurring real time every time whenever there is a context or a cue which triggers your memory. So here your amygdala plays an important role. So this is just a flow chart of how this happens. Any experience, your adrenal stress hormones gets activated, which increases your noradrenaline release. These are the hormones. This noradrenaline is involved in your increase in the heart rate and your pupils dilation and everything else, the sympathetic nervous system activation. It plays an important role. So your amygdala and cortex. So your hippocampus and cortex are the regions which are making sense of things, and amygdala doesn't make sense of things, it just registers threat. So when this thing is activated, you are just registering that memory, which is emotional memory, without the context, without the logic. This is important to understand. So whenever your amygdala gets activated, your memory doesn't have logic to it. And this is important, like why the cognitive therapy is designed in a way to bring that logic back to picture for PTSD patients. So now this was one part of the story. The other is when stress goes on for too long, what happens? So your it is seen that retrieval of prior memories are more vulnerable than formation of new ones when you are under chronic stress condition. And then is the disruption of executive function. So we will talk about these two. So as I was mentioning, there is two important things: formation of new memories and then retrieval of old memories. Sometimes it happens when we want to recollect the old memory. For example, a movie or a actor, we it's just there, we remember that thing, but we can't like recollect the exact word of that particular thing which we want to remember. This is the retrieval. So a snippet in retrieval, glitch in retrieval is very important for is it plays a havoc in our life, right? We want to be able to form new memories and retrieve new memories. And what stress does is prolonged stress, it hampers our retrieval process. We cannot retrieve the memories as efficiently as we can. The another thing it does, it disrupts the executive function. So executive function is little bit different from memory. So it concerns with more of the facts, whether you are organizing them strategically, how they are guiding your judgments and decision making. And this is this is uh, your prefrontal cortex work. So Stress also plays an important role in disrupting your executive function. Your logic doesn't work so well, and your emotional memory is activated. Your amygdala is activated. So, how it happens? Let's go into a little detail. So, before I was talking about long term potentiation, like this is the way how your neuronal networks talk to each other, they strengthen their network, and you register a memory. And when you have prolonged stress just means you have activated glucocorticoids, and glucocorticoids are your stress hormones. So you have lot of stress hormones in your body. And what these stress hormones are doing, we have discussed it. Just to recollect it back, these stress hormones are increasing the blood glucose in your system. And you know, if we have excess blood glucose, that condition is actually called diabetes, right? So your insulin is not working well, your blood glucose levels are high. But this is not, prolonged stress is not equivalent to diabetes, because here your insulin is working. Your insulin has to work a lot to manage that glucose levels in your bloodstream. So your insulin is working high. And insulin is not just a hormone to manage your blood glucose, it is also involved in something called BDNF, which is brain derived neurofactor, which is involved in your neurogenesis or formation of new neurons. So insulin is very important. It is involved in a lot of other brain related, cognitive related functions. And so, if your blood glucose is too high, your insulin is actually doing a lot of tasks just to maintain that blood glucose and not doing the other task which it's supposed to do. So, your body is always in exhaustive phase. Your body is working too much to just control that blood glucose levels in your body. And this is what happens in your neuronal networks, and this is the weakening of your synaptic connections, and this is simply termed as long term depression or LTD. This depression doesn't mean that depression, mental disorder, but this means long term depression, the weakening of the synaptic connections in your brain. So it will lead to hippocampal damage. The hippocampus actually shortens, your neuronal networks get lost, their connections get weakened, and it leads to, this is what it looks like during prolonged stress. So, this is a normal neuronal network, and this is under prolonged stress. So, by just simply looking it, you will see that there are not much changes, but these changes are really important, because if you clearly see this image, this is two neurons, right? And this is what I was talking about, like these are the dendrites. What are dendrites? Are the This is the area where it will form new connections with other neurons. So many more of these dendrites will means many more stronger neuronal connections, and in this case these dendrites are actually reduced. So this is, if we count the dendrites individually, it's around 30 to 40% decrease in the dendrites. And this decrease will compound in less neuronal networks and less memory formation. And the other bad thing it does, it actually decreases the chances of new neurons forming. So, in an adult brain, we have something called neuroplasticity. So, earlier it was thought that till age 25, our brain is developed, and after the age of 25, we cannot form new neurons, and there is no formation of new neurons. But that's not true. We now understand that there are two regions in our brain where we can still form new neuronal connections. And one of the important region is this hippocampus, where our memories are consolidated. The another important region is olfactory. the area of your smell. So that is the another region where you can form new neuronal connections. So when you are under prolonged stress or chronic stress, the birth of new neurons is inhibited. And so this rate of neurogenesis is actually you can regulate it. And we this is a good part. So if prolonged stress can reduce the neuronal networks, we can reverse it also. There is this light at the end of the tunnel. So we will talk about this just now. So now, after understanding all this, you will be asking, I don't want so much information, what I will do with it. Tell me something. Can this memory loss be repaired? And the answer is yes. So now we will talk about little bit about memory toolkit and stress management guide. So here, before going into detail, let me tell you, I will not be talking about something which is out of blue, which is very something novel or something unique. These are simple techniques which can be done, and you can manage stress and improve your memory. So these are the 5 important things: move, discover, relax, nourish, connect. 5 things where you can work on and you can do wonders to your body. And these are very simple things and very easy to do and not easy to do at the same time. So let's go into a little bit detail. We will talk about move, we will talk about nourish, and we will talk about discover. So the miracle of movement. So movement, either form, aerobic, anaerobic, strength training, helps you to manage stress and also helps you to enhance your memory. How it does it? It increases your blood flow and oxygenation. So, when I was talking about the mechanism and why it is important to know about mechanism, now you know that for your new neuronal connections, for your neuronal health, you need a lot of oxygen, you need a lot of blood, you need good amount of glucose, not too much, but a good amount of glucose in your bloodstream, a stable level of glucose. Our body loves routine. We need homeostasis in our body. Nothing too much, nothing too little. So if you are exercising, your blood flow increases, your oxygenation increases in your muscles, and it goes into your brain, and there is a release of neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters are called they include dopamine, serotonin, or norepinephrine. So this is all happy hormones and boost your um, mood boosting hormones. And they help you to improve your boost, improve memory attention, and form new memories, enhance your memory. And then it also helps in neuroplasticity. There are many studies done in people who were doing exercises, and there were brain scans done on them to understand the relation between the exercise and the how the brain is changing. And it was found that the activated amygdala decreases. So these patients are already under depression or some kind of um, uh, illness which activates amygdala. So after exercises, amygdala decreased and their hippocampus became enlarged and rich in neurons. So this is important to understand that it really works on the basic level, on the brain level. And it reduces stress because it is known to reduce the cortisol. So, how much exercise? And does it, like, what to do about it? Which one to do? And there are so many. So, the answer is exercise is better when you are liking it, when you are not forcing yourself to do it. So you have to choose whatever exercise is makes you happy. Either it be just walking, fast walking, some kind of aerobic. So there will be a mix of some kind of aerobic and some kind of strength training, especially if you are 35 and above. Start working on your strength training because this is very important. And aerobic is always better than anaerobic exercise. What I mean by aerobic exercise is when you can easily talk and exercise. That's the range where you are in your aerobic zone. And anaerobic, when you are doing so much that you cannot even talk, um, and your heart is active so much that you cannot talk even, that is not advisable. That is for people who are really into their job is exercising, their job is doing competitive exercising. For them it is good. For not for if you're exercising for life, don't go for too much anaerobic. And the third thing is, don't overdo it. Our body needs to relax, needs to overcome from the stress of exercise, because exercise is actually a mild form of stress to our body, and we understood that mild form of stress actually enhances our memory. So this is the relation between the two. So how much? At least 150 minutes a week, and mix it up with interval and strength. And it doesn't need to be an acute exercise. Even gardening or working at home or doing some kind of walking, that counts. So don't worry about that. And then there's mental stimulation. Engage and challenge both sides of your brain. So this actually view of left and right is actually now not so popular, because it is said that both left and right brain works together to do functions. But if we consider, like, statistically which part is doing more and which is not doing, which is doing less, then this is the picture which comes. The left brain is involved in language, logic, maths, linear analysis, sequence, like a lot of things doing with the logical part. And the right is mostly emotional, music, art, imagination. So engage in activities which is stimulating both sides of your brain. So right now, listening to this talk is actually stimulating your left side of your brain. So you are doing some certain kind of brain exercises now. And if you are listening to music or just cooking or doing gardening, then your right side of brain is activated. So engage in activities which will stimulate both sides. And this is actually also meditative. And then nutrition. So nutrition is very important. It for your brain, for your body. uh, we have talked about nutrition on and off in different talks. And so I will not go into too much detail because we have to leave room for questions. Um, I will just share this, which is the follow the sharp way, which means that slash the sugar and stick to your ABCs. And ABCs are: consume fresh vegetables, whole berries, fish, seafood, healthy fats, nuts, seeds. And list of foods to include are listed here: low sugar food, low fat dairy, poultry, whole grains. And list of foods to limit are fried fruits, um, sugary foods, processed foods. We all know about these facts, like high salt foods should be avoided. Hydrate smartly. Include omega 3 in your diet. It also comes if you are a non-vegetarian, you eat fish, omega 3 will be available from foods like that. And if you are vegetarian, eat walnuts. Walnuts have omega 3. Eat nuts. Nuts also have omega 3. And if not, then you can have omega 3 fatty acid tablets. Reduce portions and plan ahead so you will have a healthy meal which is freshly cooked. So, this is a graph which will tell you include just diet and exercise can increase your brain function. It will help you in your executive function as well. So, the need for sleep and relaxation. Sleep is very important. I've covered sleep in detail in earlier talk. And sleep is very, very important for our brain's health. It helps to consolidate memory, it helps to clear the neurons which are not efficient for us, and it cleanses our brain. So it's important for us. So this was the last slide, and I will highly advise you to subscribe to the channel so you will get updates of the talks. And this isn't because it's very difficult to understand the whole subject in 1 hour. And if you want to go back and make notes and just go into detail, you can just refer to these talks which are there. And just a reminder, this from 15 July, we will have a membership fee. So please support the group. And so thank you. Now I will open